they called me the next week, like, Mike, can we come over again? We had a whole bunch of dreams. And the only difference was that they had the intention in their mind. So how much more journaling, which I would go as far as to say, if you decide to journal about your dreams, to talk about your dreams, to remember your dreams, you are talking to your subconscious mind. Everything counts. And you're telling your subconscious mind, okay, I'm listening. When you write them, you're converting that listening to another energy. So you're telling your
Mhm.
subconscious mind even more. Like,
Yeah.
I care. So then your subconscious mind goes, okay, I'll start making it even clearer. This.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kirby Valladares, and welcome to Spirit Said So. Together, we'll explore powerful stories of near death experiences and spiritual gifts, conversations that may forever change the way you see life. Today, we have a wonderful guest. His name is Michael Suarez. He is a teacher, trainer, published author, and professional dream interpreter. Though his interest in dreams began early in life, he didn't begin formally interpreting, writing, and teaching about them until 2020. Since then, he has interpreted hundreds of dreams for people around the world and published 3 books on dream interpretation. His book series, The Dream Detective, shares its name with his professional and social media identity. Michael also shares insights on dreams and spiritual symbolism through periodic content on YouTube and Instagram. Folks, please welcome the dream detective, Michael Suarez. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Hey, good evening, Kirby. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited, as always, to be talking about dreams and interpretation.
Yeah, I'm excited because I've always had dreams since I was a kid. So I would like to know, like, how did you get started with the dreams? Have you always had dreams? And what's your definition of dreams and what they mean to us?
Okay, so I'll first start about where I got involved in dreams, because as you said in my bio, I didn't begin formally interpreting or writing about dreams until 2020 during the pandemic period. Then something inspired me, which I'll explain, which was basically a group that we were working on, like creating a small book, right? Like that was like the idea of the group, among other things you did. But it was actually only that experience which made me recall that when I was a child, and I have the book here, my mother got me this book called Joseph and the Coat of Many Colors, which is a famous biblical story about this young boy who has the ability to interpret dreams. Right. And really in the end, what's amazing, not to big myself up, but in the book, his ability to interpret dreams ends up saving the world. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Again, I didn't think about, I used to read this obsessively, which is very interesting, detectives, because one of the things that it tells you is, even though I believe the gift of interpretation is a gift that's in me by the Spirit of God, this also says that maybe as I was reading this, my subconscious was getting the message that dreams can be interpreted and they have importance. Right. So, like I said, I used to dream this, read this repeatedly, like when you play with the same toy over and over again when you're a child.
Right.
So that eventually, then I always had an interest in dreams after that, but it wasn't sort of conscious, right? You know, I was like 8 or 9 when I was reading that book. Then when I went to college, I started dating this girl. And after, sometimes I would stay at her house, and when we would wake up, she would like sort of sleepily in a drowsy state say, "Oh, I had this crazy dream." And to be honest, shout out to her, that's where I began really beginning to focus interpreting my dreams. I like to joke around, but it's kind of true. To interpret her, to impress her, you know, I was trying to impress her. So I put my mind to it, and I started to say, "Hey, I think this means this," and she was like, "That sounds right." And that really was the beginning of it for me, that I began to just have that in my mind. And then a lot of time passed. A lot of time passed. And I don't know exactly what brought me back to it, but something brought me back to it. And I started to do it more regularly. And then where it gets really profound and where this dream comes from is then it started to be sufficient where family and friends would like contact my mom and be like, can I contact Michael so he can interpret my dream? And that's at the level it was. Again, this is right before I sort of turned it up and started writing and teaching. And because definitely learning to interpret has been an unfoldment. That is definitely how I would describe it. It's like first you understand, oh, it's all symbols. And then you're like, whoa, every single detail counts. And then you're like, oh, the symbols are like hieroglyphs. You can kind of put them together and then like make a meaning out of them. So again, you start to understand all this stuff, but mainly through the practice. And so when my mother's friends would contact me and ask me about the dreams, to be honest, interpreting their dreams really taught me the whole craft of it, the whole craft of interpretation. And then throughout the throughout the pandemic period, there was a lot of, I was talking with a lot of people. I ended up being on the Jeff Morris show, and then a lot of people reached out to me. So I had a lot of experiences interpreting more and more. And then eventually I wrote a book called The Purpose and Power of Dreams, which was sort of like me getting out the what the basic purpose of them is and the power of them is. And then the series that I've been working on now, which is the self title, is Dream Detective. Because one day I was just like something really I felt like the spirit spoke to me and was like, you can do a book with all the dreams you've done. Because every time I have a dream and I do a dream for a client, I type it up. It's very exact. I send it to them. So now I had this as my sort of content. All I had to do was put it together. And that's eventually what I began doing, right? Like the first book, for example, Amazing Messages from Within is a collection of all of the most amazing dreams that were definitely messages to the person, right? In the second one, I began to compile what I thought people would think was interesting, which was dreams about love, sex, and the pursuit of wholeness. That's what I called it, the pursuit of wholeness. But basically, there were dreams about romance, sexuality, relationships, getting married, cheating, the whole 9 yards. So I put those together. So that's how I'm doing the Dream Detective series. And I'm hoping to do, maybe 4, 5, 6 volumes.
Yeah, so were you an avid dreamer when you were growing up? And then it's really interesting that you were interpreting dreams for a girlfriend that you were dating, but did you have any background knowledge on like dreams? Like did you read a lot of dream books for you to interpret her, or was it just your intuition that kind of guided you?
I'm sure that while I was in college, I read a little bit about dreams here and there, but I definitely think that the heart of my gift comes from intuition. But that intuition isn't abstract as many people think it is. That's why dream interpretation can be taught, and should be taught, because as I said to you, getting a dream is very obviously like a gift. You're getting a gift from the spirit realm, okay, while you are asleep. But the gift is not unwrapped until you interpret it or until you extract the meaning, because this was sent to you for a reason, right? The reason was so you could understand what's going on inside of you, on the unconscious part. So the way that my method basically developed and unfolded into a whole theory of what that I have now is that I just started taking the symbol and thinking, and this is what I would say to anybody. This is the simple art and even science of it. You take the symbol and then you're like, what does that mean? Almost that simple. Almost try to approach it like a child, you see? Like here's a maze, right? So I go, well, what would that mean? It would mean I'd be unsure about which direction. See what I mean? And it begins to unfold. The answer begins to unfold from the question itself in a dream. And also, we have something that we may not know in our favor, which is you know the answer. It came from you. That's one of the things I always like to play around with people, because people have always come to me when on the internet, on text, all these different ways, and they're like, Mike, I had the strangest dream last night. And I'm like, yeah, it must have been strange. It came from you.
You just said it. So it's coming from you. So it's coming from your subconscious mind, or because I think sometimes we think, oh, it's coming from maybe spirit sending me a message. Yeah. So is it more of your subconscious that's communicating with you since they know, or is it your higher self? Or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it is something that I've been working on and something that I want to talk about in my next Dream Detective book, because it's like an area that I have had to go in, because I can tell you from experience very plainly. I've interpreted, I say hundreds, you know, I think I'm probably at like 1,000. Okay. And what I've observed is that 90% of the dreams that I get, maybe a little bit more, are what is called like the person's having an emotional reaction. The emotional reaction, this is still amazing, but the emotional reaction is expressing itself as, in the symbology of their dream, right? So going into some like basic examples, they're like, there's something they don't want to confront. So they're having a running dream, right? There's something that they feel they can't do, right? So, I mean, that might be a running dream, but they might also have a falling dream, right? Um, Other common symbols that come up all the time, schools, right? And this is again answering the question about whether dreams are a language. They're absolutely a language. There is some subtlety there because it depends how the person thinks about school, right? That's where the subtlety is. But that the symbol is the same for everybody is becomes clear because everybody who's in school is getting some sort of lesson. Right. So that's sort of part one, is that you can tell when you study the dreams enough that, okay, even sometimes they're so weird, but these are all basically a symbolic language representing or corresponding to what's going on emotionally inside of the dreamer. This has been confirmed enough times that I like to be bold and say, like when people say, I don't think dreams actually mean anything, I'm like, I've already proven it. I've done it so many times. Okay. And again, we'll do an example to make that very clear. But then there's a small percentage, small but significant, again, maybe a little less than 10% of dreams, which are of a different quality. And these dreams, I have tried to categorize them. I'm trying to find a name for them. Sometimes I call them spiritual visitations. Okay. These happen sufficiently that we know they're happening. And they tend to overlap with things like precognitive dreams, where we have, for example, people in your family dreaming when somebody else in their their niece gets pregnant, right? There's these supernatural things that are happening. People getting visited by someone who passes, right? All of a sudden, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and like, grandma just died, right? Having that experience. These dreams are also notably different in quality because your normal dreams, the emotional ones, are fuzzy, like they have fuzzy edges. They're hard to remember. They're very obtuse. Like what? These other dreams, these spiritual dreams or these spiritual visitations, seem to be much clearer and simpler, although they still have a symbolic quality in their essence, right? But people, for example, have no trouble. They say that these dreams are lucid and crisp, right? And therefore, they have no trouble remembering them. They are often related to people getting visitations or visiting somebody like their mom or their grandmother, or somebody who passed. That's even people in my own family and friend circle have had those type of dreams.
It's almost like they want more, or at least would have wanted more time with the person. And that's the only thing that I always know about those dreams, is that they seem so special. So I agree that that probably would be its own specialized category as far as
Yeah.
dreams are concerned.
And if it's okay, I'll just share one, for example, that I
Sure.
had that was like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'll also put that the end on the question you asked before, because it's a good question and it's very strongly symbolized. But I had a dream, for example, that my grandmother, my abuela, appeared to me in a dream. This is when I was very young, and this was like the beginning of when I started to like have clear spiritual experiences. So I was like 19 or something. And I was wilding out. And I had this dream of my abuela who I only had a certain relationship with. I spoke English, she spoke Spanish, mostly type of thing. But in the dream, she appeared to me in her house coat with her sort of like famous glasses, and she was glowing. And she took off her glasses and it was like, Ay, niño, ¿qué tú haces? ¿Qué tú haces? She said it twice, which means, for English speakers, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she wiped her glasses and put it back on, which I talk about in Dream Detective Volume 1, how that was a message, and yet at the same time you can see the play of symbolism there. Like I being a detective, I know that when she took off her glasses, she was telling me I wasn't seeing clearly. Okay, that's why she wiped her glasses. And at the same time, I was getting this message that I feel is like was a spiritual encouragement message for that time in my life, and did have a very strong effect on me. Now, when we talk about things like dreams coming from your higher self, I would say the absolute answer is yes. I would say the harder question is, what do we mean when we say this higher self, right? Because part of what we're saying is we're connected. Like, for example, that dream with my grandmother, yeah, in a way, I would definitely say that comes from my higher self. But like, I don't know how she's involved in it, how all the heavenly things. I do have some occult knowledge, but I don't know how the exact way all these things work. But I know that we are coming into contact with what is called and described vibrationally or frequency as a higher realm. That's the essence of what's happening. So in that way, it is whether we're talking directly to ourselves or whether like we're being visited, that's a higher self.
Yeah, thank you for answering that question.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's always this interesting duality between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. So I think of dreams now, the way you just talked about them, and I was just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's like because your higher self, and we've had this discussion because we've done an interpretation of some of my dreams prior to this meeting, prior to the interview, and yeah, like now it starts to make sense because it's like people do say when you're connected to your higher self, you're perfect, right? You're everything, is you're all knowing, you're full of love, you're in a higher frequency, higher vibration, right? So then, I guess my point is, I could see the correlation between even just that medium and then, of course, with dreams too, as well, communicating with symbols.
So I like to emphasize, I'm one of these people, I think it comes from my teaching background where I like to emphasize key points, right? And one of the things I'd like to get people to be like, hey, about their dreams is what's happening is the unconscious realm is talking to the conscious realm. The unconscious part of you, it's in you, but you're not aware of it, is talking, sending messages to the conscious part. The night person is sending messages to, and so on. It really is. And when you understand who's talking, and that this being, and this was a good segue, and that the being who's talking is a genius with spiritual powers, then you begin to more and more understand why the ancients had so much respect for dream and interpretation.
I keep looking at the I had to pee part. It's there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was going
Let
to
me,
ask you,
let me
can we
I'll,
go through that
yeah.
example?
Yeah. So, like I said, the our minds or our subconscious minds, not only in dreams, but all of the time, dream in symbols. So symbols are our language. We talked about NDEs and just footnoting that in NDEs, the language, people don't talk with their mouths, they think. And I think that's why we think this way in dreams. So again, this should make it very clear for anybody, right? Dream is, I was running through a maze and I had to pee really bad, is what she said, right? I left some details out of that. And I opened the doors to find the restrooms, but every time I opened one, it led to a brick wall, right? I feel like that's a pretty classic dream. Like, wow, that's weird, right? Now, what's great about this dream is that it it's simple to understand, and we will also understand the application, which is the ultimate proof. Now, in terms of doing an interpretation, all that the dreamer would have to do is identify what are the key elements, like one or two, that are defining the dream, right? So it'd be like, okay, when I started doing it, I was like, well, it's obviously this, right? It's obviously the maze. Okay. So then I was like, how would I feel if I was in a maze? And I was like, I'd feel confused about direction. Really, to be honest, just from that, you know what this dream is about. Straight up, the person already. This is what I call a dream having a signature. In the most general way, while there's details in the dream, dreams you can look for to have an emotional signature. Here, the emotional signature is I'm confused about direction. See? That's the main thing. Now, we're going to get deeper comments about this main feeling of being confused about direction by the other key symbols about it, surrounding it. So, simple one is running, right? Like, when do we run? When we feel something is like urgent, we have to take care of it. But even the better symbol, which is really what gives me delight sometimes and makes me, because it makes me giggle because it's so much fun how smart our subconscious is. How would you symbolize? I'm being rhetorical. How would you symbolize urgency? Right? Like running is a good way, but what's better symbol for of urgency? Having to go to the bathroom really bad. Right? You're like, oh, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go. That, as funny as it sounds, is a profound symbol of what this dreamer is experiencing. This having to pee really bad is about urgency. So now all we're really doing is we're combining these key ideas. This person is urgently confused about the direction of their life at this point.
Wow.
Okay. Now, what's happening here is then now they're moving around. They're going to open doors. That's symbolic, right? What's a door? A door is like a new state, a new place you're entering into. So this person is looking for opportunities, right? And they open the doors. This is very like I'll go through this quick, but this is meaningful. They're looking for a restroom. That's because they are in this state of stress. This is what this dream is about. They're in stress and they want to be relieved. They want to rest, right? It's even the person doesn't know it, but the word they use to describe whatever the situation is telling. The person, for example, would not use bathroom or even toilet because really in their subconscious, what their need is that. That's what they're, or even room to rest, right? Like again, people sometimes. One time I said this, and the person was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's really how it works. Your mind is your subconscious mind is that much of a genius." Anyway, let's finish this up. So, but when they open the door looking for a restroom, all they find is brick walls. This is a clear symbol of disappointment, right? You open the door like, ah, and then there's like a like harsh disappointment. Now, I think the symbols of that are clear, right? But I feel like, and I'll let you, give me a reaction to this. I feel like when I tell you the application, it's going to get even clearer, right? In this way, the ability to apply the symbols to the meaning of the dreamer's life is the ultimate finishing of the dream puzzle. Okay? So, for example, I know this person, and at that time in their life, they had just lost their job, right? They had had the same job for years and years and years, and then they lost their job, and they were urgently looking for a new one, and they didn't know what job to take because they had always had this little same job, with a friend. So they were super confused and felt like they had to get a job quickly, right?
Right.
They they submitted they submitted applications and did interviews, opened doors to find a restroom, but no one got back to them. Opened the door to brick
Brick
walls.
walls. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. So when people write dreams, and since you do the interpretations for them, how important is it for them to also like have these key details? Because I could see, some people who don't really, start journaling their dreams. And I, for one, when I first started journaling, I would just try to put like a couple of things here and there, but I forgot the emotional component of it, right? So when you describe the maze or the running, right, how important running is, and especially in this direction, you're confused, right? So, how important is it to kind of also capture the emotion of that part of the dream for you?
It depends on the level of the person because dreams are a great reflection of like the fact that your spiritual part of your being is active. Your subconscious is working on your issues, right? So, like I said, the interpretation is the uncovering that and sort of like taking that information in. So, like, I just want to try to connect this, and this is subtle, but I think from my experience that when the dreamer becomes aware of what their dream means, the reason they had the dream comes quicker. See, so I had like not me. So Lou had this dream because she was stressed out.
Hmm.
After we interpreted, like a month later, maybe quicker, she got a job. See? So again, now this is a hypothesis I have, but I've noticed this a few times. Okay, so that this would mean that bringing awareness into the situation helps the expedite the processing of the dream.
Right. Do
Um,
do people have a lot of peeing dreams? Because I mean, that seems to be a common symbol, I
people
would
have a
assume.
people don't have a lot of peeing dreams. People have a lot of bathroom dreams.
Bathroom dreams. Okay.
Yeah, people have a lot of bathroom dreams. And just to finish that thought for anybody who checks this is like the more details, the it gets more complex, but um, you can interpret dreams with very little as well, as long as the person's getting the main symbols.
Yeah, that's a pretty empowering to think of it, especially how you mentioned that this is a gift, right? This is something that's being communicated to you, and that if you just go and look at, the symbolism of the dream, you would be able to figure out what it's telling you. There's a message there that's being brought to you. So that's really cool. I think that's really empowering, and it just adds another dynamic of this life that sometimes we think we're lost, but maybe we're not that lost, and we really have to look within. Yeah.
Yeah, that is. You're 100% right. You're 100% right on that insight. It is very, very empowering. That was like the first book is a little bit different because it's sort of like this very general overview. I didn't have the idea of putting all the interpretations into it. But one of the things I started to get to understand when I did The Purpose and Power of Dreams is, oh, this is like meaningful. See? Because I also like it because it's not based on whether you're young, old, black, white, no matter what you are. Inside of you, there's this wonderful process going on, which tells me, like after all these hundreds or thousands of dreams that I've done, that some part of you is a genius. The messages, I want to like stress and emphasize that a little bit. The messages that people get are exactly that. They are messages. I'm talking about probably the most significant and notable that may make a person sort of like pay attention is lots of warnings. Lots of warnings. Lots of don't do that, right? A person thinking, maybe I will have an extramarital affair. In the dream, like they kiss the person and the person turns into a frog. Don't do that, right? Um, these
But
messages. Sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 that's pretty funny. That you're thinking about an extra matter affair. You kiss somebody, they become a frog. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, which I was just kind of curious. Like, have you ever had a client where their dreams were almost the same message, and they just weren't picking up on the clues? Or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I have people like part of maybe what you're implying is I have people who I interpret it and actually they understand it once I explain it, but they don't always heed it. Like I've had classic cases of people not heeding it. I'll give you one quick example because you had in your mind like what was a complex dream that kind of stuck with me. So I have different reactions to dreams. Sometimes when I see the dream, like the first time, I just scan it a little bit and I'm just like, oh, I got this. It's very simple. Other times I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to figure something out and meditate on it, but otherwise than that, I'm very confident because I think the meaning's always there. But one time I had a dream, or not I had a dream, I had a client, a family friend actually, who had a dream very intense where basically in every room there were all these bugs, right? It was pretty grotesque, you know. But like one scene, for example, in like there was a body in the bathtub and it was covered with water bugs. All right. Um, so I was having like I kind of understood it. All right. And so I'm giving you two answers here. One is a dream that challenged me. The other one um, is how dreams counsel and warn us. So I'll tell you the counseling warning part first because this fascinated me. The person had the dream, so they look in the bathroom and they're like, ah, right, the water bugs, right, over the body.
Right.
Then they start yelling and they go to this room, talking about the higher self. They go to the bedroom where their mother had passed, so it's their mother's room, and they say there's someone there who they don't know, and they say to the person, "We got to get out of here," and the person just says back and goes, "No, we need to meditate."
That's the opposite of what they were trying to do in that dream at that moment.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You see how powerful that is now. It gets more powerful when I tell you that, okay, so I thought about it, was thinking about it, and she had, like I said, she had the bathroom with the water bugs, and then she had the bedroom, which had these tiny little mice in them that were underneath the carpet. Okay. Now this thing, I was like, what are these things? And like I got the basic interpretation. I said, obviously, this is telling you like you need to deal with your, like your stress, which even that's really giving away the answer. But I told her something, and then 2 months later, it was in my subconscious, and I think I heard somebody say like, "Stop bugging me," and I knew what it was instantly about,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And from that, I knew that the bugs and the little mice were actually symbols of the tiny stresses that were in this person's life. Because this person was an ambulance, an EMT driver in New York City, and they were super stressed out,
Right.
right? Like they were
Hmm.
one of these people that every little thing stressed them. They'd be honking, getting into road rage. What is this guy doing?
Right.
But do you see how powerful? So number one is that's a warning. Like,
Hmm.
hey, if like the one in the bathroom with the water bugs, that grotesque imagery, that's an imagery of death. You
Right.
see?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an imagery. There's so many powerful imageries once you take them apart. That's an image that you're in the shower, so you can't wash. You're not able to wash things off of you,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it gets deeper and deeper. And then the beautiful, magnifique chef's kiss is it gives you counsel on how to handle that.
Yeah. Right. And
Like
most dreams
that.
don't give you that.
No, no, most dreams don't. But I'm telling you, I've done it enough where I've seen that dreams are giving counsel. Like the one I just gave you before with the woman. That's a real dream,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. This one, and like I said, I have found a lot of dreams are giving warnings. Yeah, a lot of dreams are giving warnings. Happy, like victorious dreams are less common. They do
Mhm.
happen though. They do
Right.
happen.
Yeah, I could see that, because warnings, right? Because I could see that warnings are more prevalent than, I guess, like victorious dreams. I guess maybe in the same sense that sometimes if you're going into something new, maybe there is more of a sense of calm and it's like, okay, there's victory there, or you're going on a trip, like there's going to be some recharging. So I could see that. But yeah, I could see like also like your subconscious mind's like, hey, you need to like pay attention to this, or, your body, right? Sometimes we forget our body, it's also communicating probably too, like you said in the dream, she needed to like meditate. She needed to rest. She
Hmm.
got all these little things that are stressing her out. And I was even thinking, I was like, maybe that body in the bathtub may be her. And, because if she's not taking care of those stresses, that's your outcome right there. And the other
Yeah.
person was like, no, you need to meditate because you need to handle these little stressors. So, yeah, that's pretty powerful, powerful
That
warning.
one was one of the most powerful dreams. Again, that one I would consider that hard. I would consider that a hard dream. Like I can't tell you the whole thing because it's too long. But it involved like she would walk into this room and she'd see these type of little creatures, and then she'd go into it, and then she'd go talk to her mother, who again is passed. But the patterns are so awesome because again, this is what she was doing in her life. She'd see a problem and then she'd want to go pray about it. And her mother was how she associated like with the spirit realm.
Right. Yeah, her mother. Yeah. So what you mentioned that you sometimes have to meditate. Is it because the symbol is a little unclear, or you're just like kind of like trying to crack it like a detective? So, what has been like the most difficult like symbol that you encountered, as a dream detective?
So it's not, I mean, I'll think of one, but I'll tell you what I discovered was that there are some people, I think it might be folks from like the Caribbean, which is going to sound weird, but and at the same time, I've met other people and it wasn't an issue. But when I've met people about twice, I'd say, and I found their dreams very strange. Like it was almost like a different dialect. Like I could still interpret it generally, but I found it to be harder. So it sort
Okay.
of taught me that there are dialects that different people have. I don't
Hmm.
know why this is. It must be, maybe it's cultural. Because, like I said, the idea of the dream symbol is that it has a definite quality to it, but it can be taken in different ways.
Yeah. So let's talk about like teeth falling out and your interpretation of what teeth falling out means. As far as like the symbolism that you interpret it as.
Yeah. So first, I'll quickly address the like common superstitious interpretation, which actually I would say is not terrible. It's not the worst interpretation I've ever heard, but in dream language, things are connected very practically. They're just talking about your emotions. Again, like it's always going to be practical. So you'd be like, how would I feel if this was happening in real life? And losing your teeth is part of the overall symbology of death. So again, maybe that's why that got associated with, right? But the way that I address these things is I'm like, what would that person be experiencing in real life? And this actually happened where I had this a client who was struggling in her marriage. And the main thing in the marriage was she didn't feel she could communicate with her husband. And she kept dreaming that her teeth were falling out. And when I said, well, usually that means you're unable to communicate, she started crying. Okay. That for me, again, with a loving bedside manner, I'm like, yes, we got it, right? Like we hit exactly what it was. So again, losing your teeth would mean in practical external life, not being able to smile, not being able to communicate. So in the dream realm, which is also the spirit realm, that's what they would symbolize. Again, because there's always this correspondence between what is being represented outside and the energy that's inside of us.
Yeah, I really like that interpretation because now I'm not scared about dreaming of falling teeth anymore.
Yeah.
So when you journal, would you say when you start actually journaling your dreams, I've seen that people say when you start journaling, you're going to start, you're going to start remembering more of your dreams. You're not going to forget as much, you're going to be a little bit more dedicated to remembering all details of the dream. Would you agree with that? That's something that, when you start journaling,
Yeah.
you'll start
That
remembering a lot more.
that's a subcategory of, yes, absolutely, because it's a subcategory of paying attention to your dreams in general. Like I used to have this friend who would come over and we'd chill a little bit. And then one time he brought his girlfriend over and we just got into this thing of like she mentioned her dream, right? And up to that time, they weren't dreaming much, right? But we got talked about it and they got all interested in it. So as they were leaving that night, I said, "Hey, just try to be like more conscious and say like, oh, I'm going to remember my dreams." And that produced an immediate reaction. Like they called me the next week, like, "Mike, can we come over again?" We had a whole bunch of dreams. And the only difference was that they had the intention in their mind. So, how much more journaling, which I would go as far as to say, if you decide to journal about your dreams, to talk about your dreams, to remember your dreams, you are talking to your subconscious mind. Everything counts. And you're telling your subconscious mind, okay, okay, I'm listening. When you write them, you're converting that listening to another energy. So you're telling your
Hmm.
subconscious mind even more, like,
Yeah.
I care. So then your subconscious mind goes, okay, I'll start making it even clearer. This, by the way, is connected to the idea that a question people might have of what happens, why do I keep having the same dream?
Hmm.
That is your subconscious mind going, hey, I have a package for you, right? And until you take that dream that keeps repeating and open it, you'll keep getting it. Once you open it, you actually don't stop, you stop having that dream.
Okay. Yeah. So that confirms like my previous the question I asked before. It's like if you're not getting it or getting the message, if it's going to continue to have the same, you're going to have the same type of dreams. So yeah, I like that analogy
Yeah.
of like a package is there. You gotta open the door. You gotta get it. What do
Yeah.
you say to people who can't dream? Or they're like, I don't dream at all. I don't know. It's just not. It's not possible.
My understanding, based on research, is that we have satisfactorily confirmed that everybody dreams. Now, again, we're not in their minds, but the mark of dreaming, the simplest mark of dreaming is being in rapid eye movement, right? REM. So this basically means you're asleep and your eyes are like watching a movie. And they started to be like, why is that? And then they would wake the person up right after that, and the person would be like, oh yeah, I was dreaming this, this, and this. What they found was even people who, if you wake them up, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Their eyes were still doing the same movements, right? So that was like it seems to be, and then on my part, as like the mental health part of me, because I have addressed mental health before, because your dreams are a symbol of your mental health.
Dreams, I think, that starts conversations. I think sometimes people, we just, I've never dismissed them because I always find them fascinating, and it's really cool to talk to you. And when I saw you on Jeff Mara and you were describing the dreams and you were going just like you did with the example here, you went and underlined and circled certain aspects of the dream. I was just like, I never really thought to analyze it in that way, because I was like,
Mm.
now I see them differently. And I had a session with you, so I was just like, the one dream that we discussed, I was like still in awe after, and still am now, because I was like, some of the details that I shared with you, I would have never put those together, until now, where I'm like, okay, and now I could see, I see it now, and I would have never cracked it. I just would have been like, yeah, I was swimming in a pool, and not
Yeah.
realized the significance of it, and how that was tied to community, and that was something that you had mentioned. That pool, pools since with the community, and then waters with spirituality, and I remember just being like, I would have never picked that up. I was just been like, I was in the pool and I met a friend, and then we left, so yeah, so just going into a little bit more detail, and it's not hard, it's not really hard to think about that, because yes, in the summertime you hear, oh, the community pool is open, right? Community pool,
Hmm.
right? You mentioned restroom. You didn't say bathroom, didn't say like a trying to find the toilet, like you said. So interesting to pick up on those words. So when we journal, I guess it's really key in how we describe
the
certain
better
certain
the
places.
bet yeah, the better you can describe it, the better you're going to get in terms of like exactly what you're talking about. And if it's nice and clear, it's easier for someone else to describe.
Hmm.
Like sometimes when people are describing their dreams, or like if they're telling me their dream, like some people don't write them, they tell them to me and I write them down. That tends to be harder because the person wants to talk so faster than I can write,
Right,
you
I would
know.
imagine that's harder. Yeah.
But before I go, I'll do some other examples. But just to finish the thought on the like people remembering their dreams, my understanding, I think this is the thought I wanted to add to it, is that your dreams are for your own spiritual, psychological, and even physical health. They are for most people. You have something inside of your spirit being that is causing an overwhelming amount of energy. Like, oh, I'm concerned about this relationship. Ooh, ooh, you see that? The stress is mounting. When that comes in enough, it has to be released in some way. My understanding is human beings go into an altered state, sleep, and then they release, which means there's a type of catharsis by changing it energetically into these forms, which are both to express them, sort of dissipate them, and also act as a teaching tool if the person engages them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've also noticed that I was like, when you talk to people about their dreams or you actually share your own dreams, they start to open up. There's always that one dream that people seem to remember, where they were flying, obviously, like now I'm thinking, I was like, well, if you're flying, what does that mean? Because I was like,
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, is it good or bad? If someone's flying in a dream.
The person themselves knows, right? Because this is one of the things I don't think I've really emphasized in our conversation yet, but dreams, well, I said that dreams are a language, but more so, they're a language that we already subconsciously know. Okay.
Okay.
So
So
to be
flying.
honest,
Oh,
yeah,
no,
you
sorry.
already
Sorry to
know what
interrupt.
it means.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they already know what it means. So it's not like a universal interpretation for some of these symbolisms, basically. So it's really more key to the person who dreamt it.
No, well, again, it's a combination. It's a
Okay.
combination of like when they're flying, there's a definite quality that flying involves, right? Just like everything else. So you would think about what flying does. Oh, like again, as simple as possible. When I fly, I'm above the situation. When I fly, I have a different perspective, right? Those are, for example, some of the core attributes of flying dreams, right? Um, Now, flying also for many people, and this is maybe can help with the like some of the distinctions for people who are spiritually developed, flying implies spiritual exercise and spiritual growth. But you wouldn't necessarily see the use of the symbology in that way with somebody who isn't as spiritually developed. People who are spiritually developed, for example, just as one quick fun example, have dreams of learning to fly and then having to fight a dragon, which means your reptilian self, your lower self, is actually trying to fight you in your exploration to fly upward. Amazing, amazing, yeah. Dream.
Wow, that's really cool. I would have, wow, I would have thought the opposite. It was like, oh, you're learning something new that you're gonna be like connecting with the dragon, sort of like Avatar. Like they kind of connect to
Yeah.
their higher self. So I would have not put that as like your
Well,
lower self trying to fight
the,
you.
the reason the reason I only mention that is because in these type of dreams, the dragon shoots them out of the sky and not
Oh, okay,
and
that makes
makes them
sense.
fall. So yeah, just to be clear, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. No, wow. Yeah, that's actually really cool. So yeah, you mentioned the spirituality, which was actually the next part I was going to come to was, you mentioned spirituality a few times. So how has that influenced you with the dream interpretations, and how does that affect you personally? Like your spiritual. Were you always spiritual, or was it something that changed? In your life.
I got spiritualized, even though I guess I started off a little bit more on the religious side about 25 years ago, maybe more. And so I started going to church to like basically better my life because again, I was like, this is right after I had the dream with my grandmother, so I was like trying to get my life together, and that was the way I engaged it. But I've always been an honest person, so there was like things I understood, things I didn't understand. But in my engagement, whether it was like, let me put it this way, I'm very sincere in what I'm trying to get done because, like, I don't forget. Like, spiritually, we call it forgetting. Like, I don't forget, for example, that the context of our life is there's a sense in which we're preparing for death, right? Like that is a
Right.
real that's a reality. So I've always had those sort of ideas in my mind. I've always been like in college I majored in philosophy because I was just sort of sort of interested and obsessed with philosophical ideas, with figuring out the mystery, which is, to be honest, sometimes what I like to call God. So the interpreting of dreams has affected me a lot. I mean, hopefully I can sum it up. But first, it sort of began to teach me about myself It began to teach me about other beings. It began to show me how real it was, the unconscious part of us. That it began to show me that just like with life, life can seem crazy and meaningless, but when you look carefully, you can see the signature of the divine, right? These dreams, some people give me dreams that are so crazy, bro, that like before, I don't really have this now, but like when I first saw some of the dreams, I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to figure this out? And then I always had the wonderful grace because the spirit would remind me like I'm not the one interpreting.
Hmm.
There truly is, just like Joseph did, there's a power within me that even when my mind is not sure, comes from my heart and it's like, whoop, here, that's what it is, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so it has helped me to, see that. Like I tell people that the dreams are their first spiritual realm, that they encounter. I'm very, very grateful and superbly thankful because dreams are super cool. Like even people who are like not into like spiritual things are like, oh, that's dreams are kind of cool. And again, they present this undeniable testimony of how amazing human beings are.
Not sure if you're familiar with Darius Wright, Darius J.
Yes.
Wright. Yeah, and he was saying, I saw an interview on the Jeff Morrow show about how when we're in our dream state, we're 25% connected to our spirit selves. And then when we have lucid dreamings, we're about 50%. And then if you have a near death experience or out of body experience, you're like pretty close to 100% at that point to
Mhm.
spirit. So again, that just reinforces how important dreams are. Like if we, don't really pay attention to them or we're just like, oh, that was weird, and just kind of dismiss it, not realize there's some importance, right? Like you said, you may not dream a lot, but then you come to something or something comes up and it's for a reason, right? So again, I think that's kind of like really important to know like how dreams don't just necessarily just show up just for our entertainment.
No, no, they're definitely not. Like I said, when I say warnings, the warnings really vary, Like I said, like the warning is, hey, no, you don't need to run away from your stresses. You need to meditate, right? That's a classic warning. People have warning like, don't think about going outside your marriage. Um, uh, you know, um, you'll be all right. Like people who have had death in their life start to have dreams that are like them asking the spirit realm to like reassure them, right? So all sorts of reassurances, warnings. It's almost like you have the spiritual counselor, and that's a one way I've thought of it before. Your dreams are a type of spiritual therapist, and they're really cool because they're super honest and they always know what's going on, right? I'm gonna give you this quick example, which is like a wonderful one, and it's nice and simple. A friend of mine called me and she was like, Michael, for the last few months, I've been having the same types of dreams, right? And she says, in all the dreams, I'm trying to make it back home, you know? And I was like, okay. I was like, she said, back to my childhood home. And I said, when you lived there, in one word, tell me how you felt. And she was like, safe. And we interpreted the dream. And I was like, you don't feel safe right now. And you're trying to get back to that safety. She was like, that was the dream that taught me that our dreams are doing some sort of therapy on us because that's literally what her dream is wanting her to do. It's trying to connect her back to a feeling of security she had when she was, 12 years old.
You mentioned we had this conversation about you've done interpretations on like on a live,
Yeah.
show. How how difficult is it to prepare for something like that?
I love doing that. I love doing that. I have had a lot of experience as a teacher and trainer being in front of people and talking a lot. But that honestly was the coolest thing ever. Now, once in a while, it is hard. Um, here's a funny thing about it. Right after I'll describe it a little more, but right after I would finish doing it, I would always be starving, you know? And I know what it is. It's because when you learn science, you learn that the brain consumes a huge amount of energy. and like it makes you hungry. And that's literally because I used to notice it after I would be on the show, because I was on the show for a while, almost like every 2 weeks. Like I would go in and do the lives. I would either We had a few different things we did that both were challenging. One of them was like people went on and they were like, and they went on with Jeff, and they said, I had this dream, blah, 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 blah. And then I heard it and I was like, I went on, I was like, I'm going to interpret their dream right now. Right. And some of them were super challenging. Like this one lady had a dream about Raskolnikov, which is a character in literature from Crime and Punishment. But I knew the character, and she had a super complicated dream, and I went on and did her dream. Um, Other people too. But then the fun ones where it was more short was like me and Jeff would go on, and then like 7, 8 people would like he'd read them from the chat, and then I would just interpret them. And I felt generally pretty good. But once in a while, you like it would be hard to be on the spot like doing it. And I remember like one person was booing me.
Somebody booed you? That's funny.
Yeah,
Why would they
yeah.
do that?
Because I think their booing was fair. Like I remember like vaguely like there was like 7 dreams, and like theirs came up and I didn't like I all of the other ones I felt like I knocked out of the ballpark,
Hmm.
but theirs I was like I think it might be something like this, but I didn't feel sure. And when I saw the live later on, I saw they were like boo.
That's so funny. Yeah, which leads me to like, what's the experience been like with when you do interpretations for your clients? Is it really just like they're like, oh my God, like I had no idea? And I mean, because I happened to me where I was like, wow, I was not prepared for that. That was definitely something where I felt the emotions were very strong after that reading for me to be to get your interpretations for the dreams. And I remember just thinking, I was like, wow, I just didn't realize how powerful they were. So that was like the thing that I took away from that, and explaining that to my wife and my friends, and everybody I've told you about, because I was like, can't wait for them to see you on this interview. But yeah, what's the experience like for you? I guess you find you
Oh.
clearly I could tell you're very passionate about this, but what's the experience like with your clients when you do readings for them?
Those also, above all, have taught me a lot. Like, again, doing interpretation, like so many other things in life, teaches you how to do interpretation. The experience I've had, probably the most notable place to begin in terms of describing it, is actually I started using the phrase dreams tell your secrets. Because I even had to start warning people that like okay, so I would gather around that same couple. One time they brought their little sister over, right? And we're all sitting around, we're just chatting. It's like a little mira una fiesta ahí. And then all of a sudden they're like, Michael, blah blah blah, interpret. And she tells me her dream, and I interpret it. And she started crying. She started weeping, right? And it made sense. It was about her family and stuff like that, and she was scared. But that sort of like that experience started to solidify. Okay, when we do this, we're going into spiritual territory, right? We're going inside of the depths of the person, and the more accurate I am, the more intense their reaction is going to be. So then I think I started to gradually merge my dream interpretation, or pair it also with being spiritual minded and being spiritual in my approach. Like, praying before I meet with a person, praying over people's dreams, just basically, again, being definitively spiritual minded about the experience. Yeah. And like I said, a lot of it teaches me back. It teaches me what's going on inside of people, and how we express ourselves. Yeah.
And do you mind telling us what you said you were a teacher? What subject matter was it? Was it history or philosophy? I know you mentioned philosophy, and I think when you were in college. But what was your subject matter that you taught?
Well, generally, I have been what's called a trainer. right? So I've been
Okay.
called like a trainer. So I would go to, professionally speaking, I worked at a bunch of different organizations where you would go, it'd be like a corporate organization, and you would teach them different classes. Sometimes those classes were very basic, like orientation or leadership classes, and sometimes they were more creative.
Oh, gotcha.
Like dynamic team building, stuff like that, where it was more fun and stuff and so on. But definitely another part of my experiences is like I've worked with children tutoring, little children tutoring, teenagers, just quite a number of situations where I've always been in a teaching or training, designing content. And then in the last few years, I started to do like teaching on the Bible. Like it was
Okay.
really, I wouldn't start, it didn't start off as teaching. It started off as just us, like during the pandemic, we met as a group and started talking.
Hmm.
And I mentioned that in one part because to me, it's been very interesting that my understanding of spiritual things, including the Bible, is so much more enhanced now that I understand things symbolically. Like when you understand things symbolically, everything just sort of begins to line up, you know, both in mystical books, out in the world, things are working symbolically. Um, so, yeah, symbolic thinking is transformative, basically.
Are there like dream groups that you're involved with? Is there a big dreaming community? I'm curious. Like, I'm pretty sure you're not the only one out there doing interpretations, or like like, do you work with other people who also interpret dreams? Like,
I I have been interested in doing that. I'll tell you, it's a mixed bag though. Like some people I've heard once or twice interpret, and it seemed very random to me. Like again, my technique is rooted in showing you that like here's the symbol, here's the emotion, almost like something like that. And so when people are like more abstract, like oh, a snake means a man you can't trust, or you know what I mean? Like even that actually
yeah,
that could be a thing.
right.
But sometimes people are just very vague. So in those cases, like I haven't seen a lot of people do exactly what I do in terms of the like exactness of it and like again the whole going line by line. But I had a wonderful, wonderful time with the Jeff Mara people.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, and I'll share this video with them in their Discord. That's where I did a lot of teaching. So again, I spent some time, with the Bible group, but then by the time I got to the Jeff Mara group, that was a totally different type of group. So I did teachings on dreams and also on like yeah, well we ended up and it was like dreams, and we also just met for like the purpose of encouragement,
Hmm.
because I felt like people were expressing that they needed fellowship.
Right.
And so, again, this is where, like, interestingly, my ability to interpret dreams and stuff like that, it sort of inclines me to be spiritual, like to have my spirit active, right? Because it's much easier to do when you are, as another guest said, when you're like spiritually hygienic, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Everything is working with you. So I started talking to some of them initially with that, like, hey, here's dreams, and then we started going into all sorts of different subjects, across the spiritual spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, I've never met anybody who does who interprets dreams, or especially the way you do it. I mean, I'm so used to just, I dreamt this. I'm going to go on Google and see if there's a dream interpretation book. And it's very, basic, and it's very general. But I like the way you go line by line and you pretty much break it down. And then the emotional aspect of it, is key to the interpretation. So I really appreciate your work, man. So I
Yeah,
definitely want
thank
the
you.
word out on Michael, the dream detective. And do people online, do they go and say, do they send you their dreams online? Do they tag you and
Yeah.
be like, "Hey, dream detective, I need you to figure this out for me"? How does
Um,
that happen
yeah,
a
yeah. I
lot?
mean, it depends. Like, for example, like after I was on Jeff's show, then I had a lot more people that were like, was very active. And then just sometimes there's just periods where it picks up. But people have tagged me in dreams, but like my friends, like for example, like there was one dream that you mentioned, which I wrote about, where the person said, "Hey, you people who say you can interpret dreams," like it was just some person. It was a rather big account on Instagram, and like she was like a meme. She was like, "People who say they can interpret dreams," and then she was like, "Me," and then she gave her little dream, which was about riding a killer whale, um, and I was able to interpret that actually super easy. As soon as I saw like the symbols, I was like, "Oh, okay." I was surprised at how easy it was. But yeah, so I've had that experience again. I haven't had too much of experience of like again, I haven't met. I'm surprised I haven't met too many people who are also dream interpreters. Um, but yeah, people periodically, send me stuff and bring me stuff, and I've had a mixed bag with that. Like one time I actually had a dream because people kept asking me to interpret their dreams like free, right?
For
Which,
free, yeah.
yeah, which by the way, like my being a spiritual being, like you feel like there's times when people come in with their dreams and like I'm not going to not interpret your dream because I have a gift and I feel like freely I have received, freely give, you
Hmm.
know?
Right.
But what happened was just people started to, being human beings, they just started ODing, And I
Hmm.
had people constantly sending me stuff and like never like, oh, I'll hire you for like later on or something like that. And sending me a whole bunch of dreams. So again, after I went on just show, people were sending me stuff and I'd be like, and I started developing the policy of, look, I'm going to tell you what the signature is.
Hmm.
So that was, that's how I handled it. But eventually, I was going to say I had a dream that one day when people kept asking me of like bugs, you know, because people were bugging me, you know. But I learned even that, is a spiritual growth, to be honest, like learning to be mature, learning
Hmm.
to say, like, hey, like I handled it. I didn't get angry. I felt a little annoyed at first, but then I went on and was like, hey, I can't really interpret this is a whole dream, you know um
Yeah.
and just explain myself, and I was like, look, I'm doing other stuff,
Right. Right.
and people understood.
Yeah. Yeah. And the level of detail that you do on your work is it's
Yeah, it's real
very, very
work.
intense. So
It's
it's
real.
not like,
Yeah,
somebody who's just going to talk to you. I was very, very much like, looking at the documents, and I was just like, wow. So now I can really gauge, a little bit more information about what the dream was telling me. This way I don't forget to, it almost like I told my wife, I was like, it reminded me of like when, you do an essay at school and then the teacher marks up your paper and everything and then
yeah.
corrects
Hmm.
it. And then there's like a big paragraph in red, of like where like, but it was like, it looked like that to me. That's why I was like, oh, he must have like big teaching background, because that's exactly how I felt. Like it was more of like, I was like, this was so, like the breakdown was just very detailed. So I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, money's worth. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just say really quick about that. Like, yeah, I like doing it. I do love it. Like I get, it's like, whoa, this is so good. Like I get a little rush when I know I nail it, but it is intense work to take a person's dream. And so people have an idea, like a medium dream, like a person would send me. It's like, let's say it was a page long. I it's possible that like a full page would result in 10 pages of notes
Wow.
typed, 10
Yeah.
pages of typed, 10 pages of typed notes. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So where do people find you? Where can they contact you if they want to get an interpretation from you?
Okay. So I sent my link tree that should be in the description, or they
Yeah.
could find me. All the places I am on the internet have my link tree.
Hmm.
So I'm as the Dream Detective on Instagram. I'm on the Dream Detective on YouTube. And I haven't done too much YouTube yet because like I do it in spurts. But the Instagram I like because I just like to express myself periodically about
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
But from there, the person can either just contact me. I'm very easy, like like you contacted me on Instagram. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if a person wants to, the person might want to go to the link tree and to my web page because then they can see Like I have there, oh, this session, small session, medium session, long session.
Right.
I have examples, at least eight solid examples of my work on there. So like a dream and an interpretation that people can see exactly what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And yes, so that's probably an easy way for people to reach out.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm going to share that with everybody on the YouTube channel and on socials as well. And then, so I wanted to just to close out the show. Is there anything that you would like to share, with the audience? Maybe words of wisdom about dreams, or anything that you want to just impart with the audience?
Yeah, I mean I think one thing is that I want to emphasize how glorious the human soul is, the human soul that is able to conjure such wonders from its imagination. Let us all think of these things. Let us not take our dreams for granted, right? And then on the interpretation side, I glory in this gift because I feel like part of what I'm helping to do is to bring heaven to earth, because the person has this dream in their mind and they again they've gotten part of it, but now when we interpret it together, when we get the meaning, we're bringing it to earth, we're bringing the understanding, we're bringing the light that's in us.
That is an excellent way of putting it. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Um,
thank
I,
you.
I, I just think, dreams in general, I think it's overlooked, and
Hmm.
I've always felt a strong connection to dreams, since I was little. And I used to always, ask people about their dreams, even when I was little. And, a lot of times people would look at me like, I don't dream, or, people just didn't necessarily were willing to share, their dreams until, you're hanging out with people. Maybe people are a little loose, and they're willing to talk about some of this
Yeah.
stuff. I think we're at the point now where people are a little bit more willing to talk about their spirituality. I think that people are seeing things now, and there is, the message of like bringing, heaven down to earth, like you said, well put. And I think dreams are another aspect of that. And I think that's when I saw you, I was just like, hey, I was like, here we got somebody who's actually like very concrete about dreams.
Hmm.
And the way he just talks, you could just tell there's just a lot of passion and love, that you're bringing. So I also want to thank you, because I was like, you truly are someone that I could sense. Physically haven't met you, but I could see the light coming out of you, and I really appreciate
Thank
the
you.
work that you do. So thank you for being a guest on the show, Spirit Said So, and I'm sure we will have future conversations in the future, because I know there's going to be more, that will come up in the future. But thank you again. So I appreciate
Yeah,
you being on the
yeah,
show.
thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to fellowship. It's sacred.